Dragon Age The Veilguard is out, and while the series' rabid fans, myself included, are diving headfirst into the fourth mainline installment of the franchise, newcomers may be feeling a little baffled about where to start. What's the Fade? Who's the Dreadwolf? Why are people freaking out about that one dwarf? What the hell is an Evanuris? Is that building in the sky? Why can that lady turn into a bird? Well, you get the idea. We are here to help get you caught up to speed before you become a full-fledged Veilguardian. Now, these games are meaty, so it's worth noting now that this is a crash course on lore that pertains to the Veilguard, and we've condensed and omitted certain story events for the sake of time. So, before those dragons get too aged, let's dive into the events leading up to Dragon Age The Veilguard.
What do you want to know?
Everything. Start at the beginning.
Dragon Age Origins is, exactly as states, the first of the series. It establishes the lore and history of Thedas, the continent on which the events of the Dragon Age series take place. Now, the events of Origins don't have too much impact on the Veilguard, but this straightforward hero's journey introduces us to nearly every concept, culture, place, and religion we'll tackle later. You play as a newly recruited Grey Warden, a defender against darkspawn and the Blight, which are linchpins of the series, and will play heavily into the latest game. Darkspawn are mindless creatures essentially produced by the Blight, a hive mind led by a fearsome dragon called an archdemon, who is said to carry the corrupted soul of an old god. The Blight is a natural disaster of sorts, a deadness that encroaches upon the land and leads to unfathomable devastation. They occur irregularly, each starting upon the awakening of an archdemon, and don't always hit the same geographic areas. It's important to note that the only people able to successfully kill an archdemon are Grey Wardens.
The Grey Wardens were founded during the first Blight, when humanity stood on the verge of annihilation.
Why is that? Well, there's a pretty gnarly initiation to join the ranks of the Wardens where they must consume darkspawn blood and survive in a ritual called the Joining.
Those who survive the joining become immune to the taint. We can sense it in the darkspawn and use it to slay the archdemon.
That said, to kill said archdemon, the Warden who strikes the final blow will also die themselves.
And should you perish, know that your sacrifice will not be forgotten, and that one day we shall join you.
No one quite knows what the Blight is or how it started. The prevailing legend in Thedas is that a group of power-hungry magisters from a country called Tevinter broke into what people believe was the seat of the Maker, the deity worshipped by the Chantry, which is one of the major religious institutions in Thedas. This seat is called the Golden City, and the arrival of the Tevinter magisters is said to have both corrupted it and released the Blight into the world. Where is the Golden City, you might ask? It's in the Fade. And what's the Fade? Buckle up.
The first time I entered the Fade, it looked like a lovely castle filled with gold and silks. I met a marvelous desire demon, as I recall. We chatted and ate grapes before he attempted to possess me.
Think of the Fade as another dimension atop ours, kind of like the Upside Down in Stranger Things. It's a malleable and wild place, the home of spirits, demons, and dreams. In fact, mages draw their power from the Fade, which can make them extra susceptible to demonic possession. That's why most of southern Thedas treats them with suspicion or hostility. Separating the Fade from the real world is a barrier called the Veil. It's important to know that humans shouldn't be able to survive very long in this twisted, nearly unreal world. Most of Origins doesn't have any bearing on the Veilguard, but there's one particular companion who plays a heavy role. Morrigan is a young, shape-shifting witch of the wilds living in isolation with her crone of a mother, Flemeth. It turns out, Flemeth has seemingly been planning a ritual to implant her own soul into Morrigan's body in pursuit of eternal youth.
Are you still here? You cannot give them away, apparently.
Once Morrigan finds out about Flemeth's plan, the Warden and gang defeat and kill the aging witch. Later, Morrigan approaches the Warden and tells them of a ritual that could keep them alive after they kill the archdemon. If Morrigan conceives on the night before its death, its soul of the old god would be drawn to the unborn baby. A male warden can do this, or fellow wardens Alistair and Loghain. Regardless, even if you refuse, it's later revealed that Morrigan still somehow manages to complete the ritual. In the Witch Hunt DLC, the Warden searches for Morrigan, eventually finding her as she's about to enter the portal of a mysterious giant mirror she calls an Illuvian.
Do not follow me, I said.
In Dragon Age 2, you play as Hawke, a refugee of the Blight from Ferelden, the same place Origins takes place. Their story is narrated to a member of the Seekers of Truth, Cassandra, by a character named Varric that we'll meet later. The opening sees Hawke and their family flee to a city-state called Kirkwall, where their mother has family and an estate waiting for them. I should also mention, Flemeth is back, and this time, she's hot.
Well, what have we here?
The mysterious old woman/dragon shapeshifter aids Hawke in exchange for a promise that they bring an amulet up to the mountains near Kirkwall.
Deliver this amulet to their keeper, Marathari.
Upon arrival to the strictly run city-state, Hawke and family learn that their mother's estate and its wealth is gone, lost by their scoundrel of an uncle.
Gammon, how could you?
Needing to provide for their mother and surviving sibling, Hawke joins an underground crime ring, eventually drawing the attention of a dwarven writer and professional knower of things, Varric Tethras, and his prickly merchant brother Bartrand.
Bartrand, so suspicious. I have in fact brought us our future partner.
Varric and Bartrand approach Hawke about joining their upcoming expedition to the Deep Roads, a dilapidated and mostly abandoned network of underground tunnels that once connected dwarven society. Many of these tunnels have been lost for centuries and are overrun by darkspawn and who knows what else. But hey, there's probably treasure, and for Hawke, that's what counts.
Are we talking a full share here or what?
In typical BioWare form, along the way Hawke meets and recruits different companions, but the three we'll focus on here are Merrill, Isabella, and Anders. Special shout out to Fenris though, who I am legally married to.
Impressive.
Merrill is a Dalish elf, meaning she belongs to a nomadic clan who practice the old ways of the Elven.
I've studied the old ways for as long as I can remember.
Unlike the Chantry, the Dalish worship a pantheon of elven gods called the Evanuris, which includes Mythal, the Allmother, as well as the two blighted gods we'll be facing in the Veilguard, Elgernon and Gillinane. There's also Fen'Harel, the Dread Wolf, who's less a revered deity and more a boogeyman to the Dalish clans. He's said to be a trickster god who locked away the rest of the Evanuris out of jealousy. Merrill's time throughout Dragon Age 2 is spent attempting to repair and cleanse a broken Illuvian, one of the mirrors Morrigan crossed through during the Witch Hunt DLC.
This mirror could teach us so much about who we once were.
Next are Isabella and Anders. Isabella is a dashing rogue and pirate scoundrel who's clearly hiding something. But what? Hawke isn't sure just yet.
Trust me. It's better this way.
Anders is a mage possessed by a literal spirit of justice, who chafes at the hostility with which Templars, a Chantry order of warriors that monitor and stop mages they deem dangerous, treat mages in Kirkwall.
Every one of them will feel justice's burn.
Get away from me, demon!
Now, back to the Deep Roads.
Been a long time coming, eh, brother?
Once Hawke finally embarks on the expedition with Bartrand and Varric, they fight their way through wandering darkspawn until they discover an ancient idol made of red lyrium.
Is that lyrium?
More than its ominous color, its true sinister nature is revealed when the song it emits drives those who come into prolonged contact with it insane for power. Rather than sell the idol, Bartrand claims it for himself.
You're going to screw over your own brother for a lousy idol?
After the successful expedition, Hawke earns the money to take back their mother's estate.
You've settled in nicely.
They also encounter growing tensions between the Templars, led by Knight Commander Meredith, and the Templars' mage wards, led by First Enchanter Orsino.
First Enchanter Orsino, you survive.
Meredith's paranoia toward mages leads to a tighter, harsher leash, which in turn causes some mages to become even more susceptible to possession or blood magic. It's a vicious and unforgiving cycle.
We need to work together, not kill each other while we figure out who leads.
As that conflict simmers, Kirkwall is also dealing with the arrival of Qunari military forces. The Qunari are a race of horned giants, many of who follow a collectivist religion called the Qun. Their warriors are known as the Antam and led by the intimidating Ereshok.
Anahedon, Hawk. It will be interesting to see if you die.
While Qunari have larger plans of invasion and conversion, their presence in Kirkwall is due to their search for a stolen relic, the holy text at the center of the Qun.
That is why I do not simply walk from this pustule of a city.
Act 2 is a powder keg, and when things explode, they explode. Of course, Bartrand is driven insane by the red lyrium idol. The mages and Templars are at each other's throats, and to top it off, Hawk learns Isabella was the one who stole the Qunari relic after she seemingly runs off.
Getting the relic was easy. Getting away from the Qunari was the hard part.
The Ereshok's patience finally runs out.
There is only one solution.
He declares an official offensive against Kirkwall, beheading the Viscount as a show of power.
Here is your Viscount.
Depending on your choices so far, Isabella can return with the relic in a surprise display of loyalty.
I'm sure you'll find it mostly undamaged.
However, the Ereshok will demand her death unless Hawk fights and kills him.
I refuse your challenge.
Then all of you will die.
After the Ereshok's death, hostility between the mages and Templars grows more violent than ever, and without a proper Viscount, Kirkwall is in chaos. Hawk does what they can to quell the conflict to no avail.
Face the truth, Knight Commander. You are done.
That is for me to decide, no one else.
It finally reaches a devastating point of no return when Anders, guided by justice now turned vengeance, bombs the Chantry, killing everyone inside, including the head of the Kirkwall Chantry, Grand Cleric Elfina.
Why would you do such a thing?
The terrorist attack leads a crazed Meredith to invoke what basically amounts to a final solution, wherein she calls for a purge of every mage in Kirkwall.
Every mage in the circle is to be executed, immediately!
Desperate to defend the mages of the city, First Enchanter Orsino resorts to blood magic and transforms into a grotesque creature that Hawk is forced to kill. Hawk has to choose whether to support the mages or Templars. Regardless, a confrontation with Meredith, who Hawk learns has had the red lyrium idol in her possession, partially explaining her descent into hate-fueled madness, was inevitable.
You recognize it, do you not?
Once Hawk defeats her, she quite literally transforms into a statue made of red lyrium. With Kirkwall precariously saved, Hawk follows one of two paths depending on your final choices. Stay in Kirkwall to help rebuild if they supported the Templars, or leave Kirkwall to avoid potential punishment if they supported the mages. The epilogue reveals the events in Kirkwall have had a ripple effect across southern Thedas, and a civil war brews between mages and Templars.
It is in the Maker's hands now. We put our faith in him.
Now, Dragon Age 2 has 3 major DLC, but the most vital to discuss is Legacy. It begins as Hawk and their siblings are attacked by dwarves from the Carta crime syndicate with no explanation. This ultimately leads Hawk and gang into the Deep Roads in search of an imprisoned, ancient evil, controlling the minds of the Carta dwarves through the Song of Lyrium. That ancient evil turns out to be Corypheus, a sentient darkspawn who claims to be one of the magisters that broke into the Golden City.
Oh, shit.
Hawk has the option to help the Wardens free him, or to help another sentient darkspawn and former Warden, Larius, destroy him once and for all.
He knows you are close. You must be ready.
Regardless of what you choose, Corypheus, unbeknownst to Hawk, manages to escape and becomes the big bad in the next game, Inquisition. At the start of Inquisition, a conclave has been called to find a peaceful solution to the Mage Rebellion and end the Civil War. However, as the conclave convenes, there's a massive explosion that rips a hole in the Veil and kills many of the major leaders of the Chantry, Templar, and Mage factions, including Divine Justinia, head of the Chantry. With a giant breach in the sky and tears in the Veil all over, your character is held prisoner after you were discovered at the site of the explosion.
Tell me why we shouldn't kill you now.
People claim to have seen a figure pull you out from the Fade, many declaring it to be Andraste herself, who's a sort of messianic, Christ-like figure to the Maker. Not only are people calling your character the Herald of Andraste, you've also now got a mystifying mark on your hand called the Anchor, which is capable of closing these torn Fade rifts and repairing the Veil.
I don't know what that is, or how it got there.
You're lying!
Cassandra and Varric are back as well, with an elven mage named Solas who stabilized the mark on your hand.
It seems you hold the key to our salvation.
Their assistance, along with the companions you recruit, will allow you to eventually close the massive breach in the sky. Unfortunately, once you do, Corypheus returns with an army of darkspawn and Templars corrupted by red lyrium, claiming the Herald of Andraste has stolen the Anchor from him. Corypheus attempts to use a mysterious orb to reclaim the mark.
Beg that I succeed, for I have seen the throne of the gods, and it was empty.
You are able to defeat Corypheus with some quick thinking, but not before he destroys your base and leaves you and the survivors stranded in the unforgiving snowy mountains. The group travels to a long-abandoned fortress called Skyhold, where Solas pulls you aside to explain that the orb Corypheus carries is of elven origin.
But however Corypheus came to it, the orb is elven, and with it, he threatens the heart of human faith.
At Skyhold, Cassandra invokes a long-forgotten order of the Chantry, the Inquisition, and names you its leader, the Inquisitor. Sometime after you arrive at Skyhold, the Inquisitor is given an option to ally with either the Templars or Mages to stand against Corypheus. The game veers into different directions based on the Inquisitor's choice, but the details of Corypheus's plan, raise a demon army, assassinate an empress, destroy the world, are ultimately revealed. Much of the game sees the Inquisitor embark on several major missions to thwart those plans, while meeting several returning characters. Hawk is back, potentially ending up trapped in the Fade, or tasked with helping the Wardens rebuild at their main base. Weishaupt. Morrigan also returns, this time as a magic advisor to the Empress of the Nation of Orlais, Celine.
I am Morrigan. Some call me advisor to Empress Celine on matters of the arcane.
She later joins the Inquisitor against Corypheus, accompanying them to the ruins of the Elven Temple of Mythal, where one of you has the opportunity to drink from the Well of Sorrows, which would bless you with all of the knowledge of Mythal herself, while tying whoever drinks inextricably to her. Afterward, Flemeth returns, again!
Now, isn't this a surprise?
And reveals herself to have been carrying a fragment of Mythal this entire time.
I have carried Mythal through the ages.
She wasn't ever attempting to replace Morrigan's soul with her own, but was trying to voluntarily pass along Mythal's fragment to her daughter. Morrigan, obviously, does not take this well.
And you follow her whims? Do you even know what she truly is?
It's a time for big revelations. It wasn't Andraste who pulled you from the Fade after all, but Divine Justinia before she perished. Corypheus, it turns out, was planning to use her blood as a sacrifice to unlock the Veil and enter the Fade.
One day someone will summarize the terrible events of your life so quickly.
Finally, the Inquisitor defeats Corypheus. Time to celebrate. But without Solas, because this time he's the one who disappears.
It was not supposed to happen this way.
Credits roll on the game after an epilogue recapping your choices and their effects, until you get to an end credit scene where Flemeth/Mythal speaks to Fen'Harel. And guess what? The Dreadwolf has been Solas the entire time. Inquisition might be over, but the Inquisitor's story certainly isn't. In the game's final DLC, Trespasser, the Inquisitor and their advisors attend an exalted council held by the Chantry 2 years after the events of the game. It brings together emissaries from rival political nations, Orlais and Ferelden, over a question as to whether or not the Inquisition should continue to exist. Meanwhile, the anchor on the Inquisitor's hand has grown exponentially more painful and is on its way to killing them. As the council is in session, Qunari spies, known as the Ben Hassrith, are found dead, revealing a Qunari plot to use strategically placed powder kegs to kill all the major political leaders gathered.
I think the Exalted Council may be more exciting than we expected.
The Inquisitor takes it upon themselves to investigate the source of the Qunari and discovers a fully operational network of Alluvians that take them to the Fade. There, they discover the Vidisala, a leader of the Ben Hassrith, who claims their invasion plans have been thwarted by an agent of Fen'Harel.
This agent of Fen'Harel has disrupted everything.
Pursuing the Vidisala, the Inquisitor and their party arrive at ancient elven ruins that reveal an earth-shattering truth. The elven pantheon, known as the Evanuris, were not gods, but tyrannical elven mages who enslaved their people. And the Dreadwolf, it turns out, was the one to lead a rebellion against them and ultimately lock the Evanuris away in a Fade prison. The Inquisitor and the Vidisala finally encounter this agent of Fen'Harel, who's actually Solas. This is when the Inquisitor learns that their once traveling companion is the Dreadwolf himself.
I suspect you have questions.
After the Vidisala's defeat, Solas reveals he was the one to set the events of the game in motion by giving the orb to Corypheus. His plan? Tear down the veil he created and bring the Fade back to the real world, no matter the cost.
I will save the elven people, even if it means this world must die.
Solas laments the potential loss of life, but feels this will atone for the mistakes of his past. Before departing, Solas offers to remove the anchor from the Inquisitor's hand, lest it kill them.
Drawing you here gave me the chance to save you, at least for now.
As the Inquisitor returns to the Exalted Council, they're faced with two major choices. The first is simple. Will they disband the Inquisition for good, or hand the reins to the Chantry to use as it pleases? The second is more nuanced, and truly sets up our antagonist for the Veilguard. Stop Solas, or save a tortured man from himself.
You don't need to destroy this world. I'll prove it to you.
The final scene of Trespasser sees the Inquisitor and their advisors plan their next move in the search for Solas. And it seems it's going to lead them to one place, to Vinter. Now, it's worth taking a few moments to talk specifically about Solas. What's his deal? To recap, Solas is an ancient elven mage who led a rebellion of enslaved elves against their would-be gods, the Evanuris. To do that, he had to separate the world of magic from the physical world, which is why he created the Veil, basically to imprison the Evanuris behind it in the Fade. This had devastating consequences. Elves lose their immortality, and infrastructure reliant on magic to operate completely collapses. The elves are free of slavery under the gods, but are attacked by Tevinter, which leads to centuries of oppression. Solas falls into a deep slumber after the effort of creating the Veil, so he's not there to help them, and when he wakes to see what he's done, he feels his only option is to give power to Corypheus to destroy the Veil.
Let it end here!
With Corypheus defeated, Solas absorbs Mythal's power in the end credits of Inquisition in order to give himself the power to tear down the Veil and, in his mind, atone for the mistakes of his past. Straightforward, I know. So, there you have it, a crash course on the 3 mainline Dragon Age games ahead of your very first playthrough of the Veilguard. So simple, right? Luckily, the Veilguard does its best to introduce you to Solas and his plans, and does so pretty well.
Thank you for letting me know.
That said, we think this guide will help fill in those knowledge gaps for new players, and for some of you longtime fans, provide a bit of a refresher. So create your rooks, kiss those new companions, and go get Veilguarding.